Good. Okay. All right. So let me start with some of your points. Thank you. Yes. All right. We're good. So I won't cover y'all because y'all didn't do the reading, but there's about 3 of you who did. So, all right, let's go. So, overwhelming question. So we're looking right now at the Exodus. So this is the freeing of the slaves. This is when they're crossing the Red Sea, if you recall the stories, right? That's what we were supposed to study. So, so before that, there's the 10 plagues of Egypt, right? And all of you had the unanimous question, why did God harden Pharaoh's heart, right? So we're going to look at this today, but I want to say just now that the translation is a bit off. It's either God made Pharaoh's heart difficult, right? So there's an intention there, which doesn't take away his free will, by the way, right? That his heart is difficult means he's struggling, right? Doesn't mean that he can't opt, for freeing them or not. It's just his heart is difficult, right? Doesn't mean it hardens. So harden is a bad translation because harden implies that, Pharaoh is like stuck in the no, you know what I mean? Stuck in the negativity, in the negation, but he's not hardened. There's 3 verbs, right? Making it difficult, strengthening it, which is translated as hard. That's different. If God is strengthening your heart, doesn't mean God is hardening your heart, right? So that's a totally different connotation. And then this never translated, but very important, the heart of Pharaoh is weighed down. The word kaved, weight, is there. Those are the 3 expressions which are translated unanimously badly as hardened, right? Which has nothing to do, it's very different connotation, right? So we see that the free will of Pharaoh is not impacted if God is making his heart difficult, or if he's strengthening his heart, or if he's weighing down his heart. This has nothing to do with his free will, right? It just God complicates things, which, remember, that's his specialty, right? God likes to complicate things. He has an agenda when he begins to instigate stuff. We've seen it already. Remember with Cain, right? He didn't have to do that, right? Like refuse his sacrifice and make a big deal, right? What would it make Cain all angry, right? And then instigate eventually the death of Abel, right? So God, remember, is an instigator. He has, I love the way you put it, Nicolopoulos. You said God always has something up his sleeve, right? So he's always reading the text like, let's see what happens, right? God has something up his sleeve. So he has something up his sleeve here, right? So does that answer a little bit the questions of I think both of you had that. Do you see the nuance, right? The free will remains intact. Yes.
No, I had a question about, well, this and something else, but specifically we're talking about hardened or is it challenging or
So it's either making difficult or strengthening or making heavy. So that's not hardening, right? Yeah.
I'm familiar with this interpretation and I like it, but then it's also difficult to keep with that interpretation because it's paired with I'll harden Pharaoh's heart, making him obstinate. Like obstinate feels a bit
He's doing that. The obstinate, I have to look at the Hebrew. I didn't look into the obstinate. I saw just the strength. Show me exactly the text so we can look at it.
Stubborn isn't free will. It's just like he has a personality. That's like one of the
Harden I can interpret as like, oh, like he won't be like afraid and so he can make a better decision. But stuff
that's this strengthening, right?
Yeah, that's like
yeah.
But like obstinate or stubborn feels more like, oh, I'm gonna make it so he can't change a decision. Like when I hear stubborn,
yeah, there's definitely an instigation. Like I won't take it away that God is creating a situation, right? He is creating a psychological effect, but there's a reason for that, right? So we're going to look at that. God has something up his sleeve, but the main point is that yes, he's making things difficult, yes, but doesn't mean he's affecting the free will. You follow? So to make someone stubborn doesn't mean you make someone entirely evil, right? Stubborn can mean it's hard to work with you, but eventually they might shift. Who knows, right? Stubborn is not hopeless. Evil, it's over, right? Yes.
sorry, can you just remind me? Because I feel like there's something comes to mind with similar connection, but was this stated before or after God starts sending the plagues to Egypt?
This is the plagues. Each plague, the heart of Pharaoh has a certain
Right.
permutation. right? So
I do
we're,
remember that line saying that, God, stated that he, hardened Pharaoh's heart.
that's it.
But I was gonna say, this, in a sense, it reminds me of, or based on the connection I wanna make, it's like when the Israelites were freed and they were in the desert, I believe, and it says that God allowed for, snakes to bite them because they were complaining. So it doesn't specifically mention, God sending them. It
Yes.
just says he allowed it to happen.
Yes.
Take their protection away. So in this situation, do you think God allowed Pharaoh's heart to be hardened?
I think he's
instead of-
working. There is an intention. Yeah, sadly. I mean, it's not sadly, right? I think God, there's here an intention to mess with Pharaoh's heart for sure, right? So it's not like the snakes, which we can interpret in the ancient Near Eastern context that they trespassed some law and the chaos, arrived in the camp, right? So, but here, no, he is messing with Pharaoh. I don't think he is limiting his free will, but he is messing with him, like he messed with Cain. Like he messed with Eve, right? Adam and Eve, putting the tree in the middle of the garden, excuse me, that's messing with us. It's like that is asking for it. You are asking for us to eat that fruit like this. So he does that, right? We're not surprised, but let's see what he has up his sleeve, right? That's what I'm gonna suggest today. Okay, still with Gubin, more specifically, oh gosh, now I can't read. With regards to the destruction of the Egyptians, where does it say that God is happy?
No, it doesn't say that. It like feels like it's a prideful, like, look at what I did kind of.
Where do you see that in the text that God is prideful about what he
like,
did?
He says, like, I'm the God that took you out of Egypt. I'm gonna protect you.
That's different than
Right. I don't know,
rejoicing
it
over
just-
the death.
It feels prideful, but it's not.
Definitely, I'm the God who
Yeah.
took you out of Egypt, but doesn't mean he's, particularly happy about how it happened, right? And you know the Talmudic story, of course, right? About this.
Maybe.
Well, let me tell you. So the Talmud, you all know what it is by now, right? It's the rabbinic commentary. So the rabbis, they look at this story, right? And they tell a kind of a story about it. They look at what happened, right? The Egyptians dying and so forth. And they tell the following story. They say that when this happened, and Moses and Israel broke out in song, the angels were so happy they started singing along, right? And God was like, shut up. And the angels are like, why? Right? And God is like, don't you see my children have just died? And you want to sing, right? His children. Who are his children here that just died?
Yeah.
The Egyptians, right? So the rabbinic commentary is actually giving us a deeper lens, right, into what is happening and the intentions of God, perhaps, right? So nothing in the text, but certainly there could have been another way for Egypt, right? Just like there was a plan A for Canaan and a plan B happened, there was also a plan A for Egypt and a plan B, right? We're going to look at that today. Okay, so Lam, yes, you notice correctly, progression from kind of, just playing around, and then it gets more and more, the plagues become devastating, right? In the beginning, it's a bunch of snakes, right? And then you have the Nile into blood. It's all kind of like magic tricks, right? And the magicians are actually replicating, right? Little by little, it becomes more and more devastating. You have plagues that decimate the food sources, right, of Egypt. I mean, even the advisors of Egypt are saying, Egypt is ruined, right? They tell Pharaoh, stop. Egypt is ruined already, right? Yes.
I just find it really surprising that Pharaoh could be that prideful
You-
to the point that he's putting his own citizens' lives at risk.
You have not met people like
No, not like this.
that?
I find that surprising, actually.
I have met people like that who would rather everything around them dies than they lose their ego here. It's not many, but there's a few. There's a few.
A
So
little different.
so okay, so yes, there's a progression, and then of course it ends with death, right? And we're going to look at that. The death of the firstborn is problematic in our context that we're trying to make God, pacifist. So what's going on here, right? So we're going to look at that. Yes.
To answer, but you're right, so it translates, I will make Pharaoh obstinate. But then when I look at the Hebrew, it just says, I will harden Pharaoh's heart, so.
Not harden, make strong. The
Okay.
chazak is strong. Caché is difficult. Not caché is too difficult. It's difficult. Like is a caché in modern Hebrew is difficult, complicated. I will complicate his heart, right? Which we're not surprised. That's his specialty, right?
Yeah, it's the same verb used to describe like the labor that the that displays one.
Oh, you're doing good. That's the idea. You see what he did? I always want to point out when someone doing good exegesis, right? He found a word and he found in a separate passage the same word and he's connecting the two passages, right? So very nice. Yes. Okay. Good. Yes, that works. That works. So there's a parallel, right? That's interesting to explore. Very nice. So let's see if I can read here. Um, it's annoying. Why do I write like this? Like I could slow down and then be able to. I'm wasting time. Like it's. So God is not. What did you write? What did you write? Still something about. Oh, you sense that God is working with him, Pharaoh,
Yeah.
right?
It was,
Yes.
it was, but
Is he
so-
right?
Yeah, but so far, God has only worked with his own.
Yes. Well, not really. Cain.
He still believes in that God. But
Yeah,
Christians don't
That's true. But I think you're onto something because that's what I'm going to show. God is actually working with, right? He has something up his sleeve. What is it? Has to do with Egypt, right? So I think you had a good intuition. Very, very good. I mean, God, remember, God is not just the God of the Hebrews, right? God is a cosmic God, right? Yeah.
On that topic, after seeing all the signs, what's his name? Pharaoh would have believed, right? And
Would he though? I mean, not necessarily.
oh, that's because you said that the Egyptians were replicated.
There's so much ego in Pharaoh,
Yeah.
right? It's not that he doesn't see. He sees.
blinding.
Yeah, he's just there's so much ego that even if he sees, he's not gonna, otherwise he looks stupid, right? Like he can't lose this war. I mean, we see this, any country at war, we see this even with Ukraine and Russia. They can't, neither of them is gonna let go because neither of them wants to lose this war. This is where we are, right? This is the mentality, right? Yeah.
You know what you said too, because you said that in Egypt, because you said that whenever God works with a person, he has to work with the person based on who they are, their background, all these things. And you said that when it comes to Egypt, the pharaohs believed even in themselves that they were as though they were God.
Yes, so that's difficult to work with another god. You can work with a human, but it's hard to work with a god. And that's what makes Pharaoh so hard to work with, because he sees himself as a god, right? So, this is difficult, caché, right? Okay, interesting idea, the yeast and the firstborn, which I need to think about. She makes connection between the bread without yeast and the death of the firstborn. Are they connected? I'll let you guys think about that. It's an interesting question.
Just say no wonder he had to use Moses because Pharaoh wouldn't have listened.
What do you mean? Why
As in,
Moses?
He used Moses as the person to free them
Yeah.
instead of directly going to Pharaoh.
Yeah, why? Why?
Because Pharaoh would have, well, as we see, been so hardened.
Oh, he can't see God because he is God. That was it what someone else asked this question, why he didn't directly, that was you, right? Maybe Pharaoh can't see God because he is God. You have to kind of work.
But he revealed himself to the previous Pharaoh, like way back in time.
It's a different guy though. You saw how open he was to Joseph, right? It's different.
No, they're like in the time of Abraham.
And then there was a fear. He feared God, that Pharaoh, right? He was afraid of God, remember? And he says, you brought, punishment from God on my house. Is a little more humble, that Pharaoh,
But that
right?
was only after God revealed himself in a dream.
Yeah. So yeah, God in several dreams, right? But it gets less and less, right? Because you have a direct revelation in that first Pharaoh when Joseph is that after, yeah, when Joseph is a more nebulous dream, right? That he cannot understand. And now there's no dreams. It's as though the pharaohs of Egypt had progressively become more and more wicked, right? So God is less able to reach them. So now he has to work with a human being, right? You see how the dreams fade out, right? It's first a very vivid dream, God speaking directly to Pharaoh. Then it's a symbolic dream when Joseph, at the time of Joseph, it's a symbolic dream that he can't interpret unless Joseph is there. And now he just has no dreams. He's lost mystical ability, right? So you could see that a progression of the pharaohs, a progression of Egypt towards more and more wickedness, right? Yes.
I feel like you could argue for that. It's like the more they become less, the less they have sympathy and empathy for others.
That's
they
it.
become more humanity, and they are less in touch with other people.
Very nice. Yes, absolutely. Right. And you see the earlier Pharaoh, right? He didn't have a huge slave force, right? At the time of Joseph, there were no slaves. Now they have slaves, they're oppressing. And the more they're hard with regards to other people, the more they cannot, right? It's connected. Empathy to people, connection to
Yeah,
God,
it's like what
right?
you said about how like a king or anybody who's a ruler is actually the server of the people.
Exactly.
And in this case, obviously, this family.
It's
isn't.
flipped, right?
And that's why I feel like he can't.
Yeah.
Be like in tune with God.
Yeah, absolutely. And he brings chaos onto
Right.
Egypt, right? He's lost the shepherding role, right? And now so I can't get all the questions because we need to get in the text, but sorry. But okay, so I think that's it here for now. Okay, let's go into, yeah, let me skip a few of your questions and let's go into the text itself. Okay. So, I think Lam had the right intuition in the sense that what I think is happening here, why God is messing with Pharaoh's heart, right? Without affecting his free will, right? But he is messing with his heart. He's messing with his heart because he's working with him. I believe that the target here of everything, the target audience, who God is trying to reach, is not the people of Israel. It's not Moses. It's Pharaoh. He's trying to reach Pharaoh. Just remember with Cain, everything was going on with Abel, but God actually had Cain in mind, right? In this whole ordeal, he has Pharaoh in mind. He's trying to reach Pharaoh, and he's trying to reach the Egyptians, right? So it seems like at the same time that he's trying to redeem Israel, he's trying to redeem Egypt, right? Let's see if we can get all of us, right, to go. So that's what I'm working with, right? So here are the indications why I think he's here working with Pharaoh. The number 10, right? 10 plagues. What, anybody know the significance of 10? What does it mean in the biblical tradition, the number 10?
Yeah,
Yes, go ahead.
there were 10 tribes that came back and said that Israel was not fertile land, was not able to be habitable.
Good. Any other 10s that you're seeing?
And in a million, 10 men, at least 10 men.
Where?
In
Oh, a minion. Yes, 10 men. Okay, okay. 10 commandments. Okay. There's another 10 that I'm thinking of, which has to do with the high holidays, with the
10
day.
days of repentance.
Okay, very good, right? So right before the highest, the most holy day of the year of repentance, there are 10 days of repentance, right? In the book of Daniel, Daniel and his friends, they are given 10 days of testing period. When you read the book, which we will read, you will see that he is being tested. Daniel didn't want it, he wanted to eat kosher, right? So he said, we're just going to eat vegetables. And the man in charge says, well, I'll give you 10 days, right? And see how it goes. So it's a testing. So 10 is the number of a test. So here we are in a way here, these 10 plagues signify 10, this kind of liminal period where anything could happen. There could be a complete turn, right? Or not, right? It's a period of testing of Pharaoh of Egypt, where they're given a chance through these demonstrations of power to switch their course, right? To switch the direction that they're going. You follow me? You see? And of course, I believe he's working with Pharaoh because you have this notion of messing with his heart, right? So let's go into that a little bit. Let's talk about the heart here. That's good. So I tried to make order of it. I couldn't. It alternates between he's strengthened, the heart. So okay. So first of all, let's put it this. Let's talk about these heart issues. First of all, what I noticed is the first 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 plagues is Pharaoh doing his own strength, or the heart. God is not intervening. It's the heart itself is strengthening, right? Or it's being weighed down. These are the two options, right? So God is not here doing it. Then you have a transition where for the first time, God strengthens Pharaoh's heart in the 6th plague. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, right? And then it goes back. Pharaoh's heart is weighed down, and then God says, I will weigh down. So there's an exacerbation. So actually, let me write it on the board, because that way you have it. Let me write what I got. So here is the computer saying yes. Okay, good. All right, so one thing I wanted also to tell you is that I think we have counted the 10 plagues wrong. This is something that just occurred to me when I was, because right, we include the firstborn as a plague, but we forget that there's one plague before the Nile. Anybody know what it is? The snakes. This is a plague. So you see, there's a mistake. I'm serious, right? There's not 11 plagues. We know it's 10 because the 10, the symbolic number. So I would like to argue that the firstborn is not a plague, something else. We have the snakes all the way to the darkness. Those are the 10 plagues, yes.
But it was just one, the snake with a sign.
No, because it's, okay, so let me, when you go to the text, right, you have the structure of the text. Well, actually, I'll put it here. Structure of the text indicates that it's one of the plagues because you have an opening statement where God says, I will make Pharaoh's heart difficult, right? So heart will be, so this is God announcing something's about to happen. And then tak, 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 tak. So you see in that context, I see the snakes as, and then the snakes comes right after that, right? So I would like to argue that the snakes is part, and you have the same right after the snakes, the magicians are doing it, and then Pharaoh's heart is strengthened, right? So this is, it's part of the whole, right? You follow me, Davido? You have the whole, this is the same system. You have the snake, then you have the magicians trying it like in the other plagues, right? And then you have the heart being strengthened. So you have the same, it belongs to this pattern, follow? So I know this is crazy, I know, because we've been taught that the snakes is just a little magic trick, but it's not. So let's put that here, the snakes. With the snakes, you have a God, the heart is strengthened. Strength, how do I spell strength? Strengthened, okay? God is not involved, it's Pharaoh, right? Then you have the Nile, which becomes blood, and here again, same thing. Then you have the frogs, and here you have a different expression now. The heart is weighed down. Huh, why is that? Okay, then you get to the dust, slice, and here you have again strengthened. Okay, then you get to the insects, and here you have weighed down. Still, it's all Pharaoh so far, right? It's not God. Yeah, well, continuing over here. Okay, after then we have the boils. And here now you have for the first time the Lord strengthened, right? Pharaoh's heart, Lord strengthens, right? Then you go back to the livestock. And you have weighed down. Now, God is not there again, weighed down. So here we have the Lord. Then we have an interlude where God explains, I raised you up. I'll explain this a bit. This is in 925. And then we go back to hail. Here we have again weighed down. God is not involved. Yeah. And then we have finally another interlude. Now it's the Lord who weighs down. Have you guessed my writing? I can't do better. And then we go to locusts, where we have was strengthened. Finally, the darkness, where the Lord strengthens. Okay. All good? Yes, can you read? Yes.
What's up with frogs?
Dust or lice.
Oh,
Oh,
goodness.
Okay. Okay, so you got this? Everybody copied this down? Yes? Okay. Now we can work with this, all right? Okay, so we see a number of things here. First of all, we see that, I think this is the most important part. We see that God doesn't do anything until the plague of the boils, right? Up until now, Pharaoh's heart's doing its own strengthening and weighing down, right? Yes.
was it for,
What?
was it for Nile?
9.
Nile, Nile?
Oh, the Nile is strengthened. See? Quotation, quotation. It's the same thing, right? It's strengthened. Okay. Do you guys need time to copy this or? Okay.
I don't know, maybe, I don't know, but in this version of the Bible, it says the livestock dies before the boil.
I know. I saw that. But in the Hebrew Bible, it's the opposite. They flip it. It's weird. I know it's a different order. It's different verses too. I don't know what happened.
Yeah.
We have to
This
check.
is-
Yeah.
Chapter 9 is Egyptian livestock died. And then
Hmm.
chapter 9, verse 8 is the sixth plague boils.
Exactly. What do you guys have in your Hebrew Bible?
Boils, sixth plague, and epidemic on the cattle is the fifth plague.
Did I get it wrong? Okay, because this Bible is like, okay, so let me make sure what's in my Bible now. Okay, where are we? The boils. Okay, hold on. Frogs, lice, blah, blah, blah. Livestock, and before the livestock, insects. And then livestock. And then boils. Oh, so me, boils come after livestock, not you?
Yeah,
No,
well,
boils
it's
comes
not-
after livestock.
What's the
You
problem?
put boils and then livestock.
Oh, I put it like that. Oh, I made a mistake. Yeah. Sorry. Yes. Okay. Maybe that changes.
Yeah, but you're writing that after the boils, after the boil it says now it was God who made the.
Okay,
the
Lord, wait there.
Brackets, it
That's
says now. it
interesting.
was.
So now we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 plagues by himself. The seventh is the Lord. Interlude. Like. Okay, then it becomes more intensified. Okay. So I have not figured out if this order means anything, but I figured out a few other things. So you can ponder the order, look at, for sure we see one thing. Okay, so first thing we notice, God doesn't enter the scene until the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7th plague. God begins now to weigh down the heart, right? So this is really Pharaoh.
The verb change, so before
Yes.
it was made difficult, it was a kasha, and now it's by hazak, strong.
Yes, but
Some of their livestock.
I'll tell you later. Figure it out. So say that again.
Like it's the verb changed to reflect what you were saying.
Yes.
You made it stronger, like before it was, you made it difficult.
Yes, in the
Now
first time.
now it's-
Exactly, it switches. So he made it difficult only the first line, and then everything else is strengthened or weighed down, right? So first thing we notice, right? Pharaoh is leading here. He's the one who sets the tone, right? Okay, now I want to talk about the notion of strengthening. This notion of strengthening is found in military context. Okay, you have, for example, Joshua, when he enters the land, God tells him, be strong and courageous. So strengthening has to do with bracing oneself for military warfare. So why is the language here military language? What do you think? Why is the writer writing this 10 plagues with military language? What's the meaning? What do you think is the meaning? Yes.
Symbolic.
What?
Could it be symbolic?
Symbolic
like
of what?
God be battle with Pharaoh's heart.
God is in a battle, but with who? Some of you know what do you think all these plagues represent? If you're familiar with Egypt, right away you see.
Oh.
Yeah.
The Egyptian gods.
Exactly, right? Each plague is a hit, not against Pharaoh, but against an Egyptian god, right? I'll give you the names. I guess I should write them down. I won't. I'm just going to read them to you, right? So the snakes, this is the god Apep, the god of chaos, right? You don't need to write this, but you can just say they're generally Egyptian gods. The Nile, Hapi, god of the Nile, source of life, right? The frogs, so the god of fertility had a frog head, right? This is the god Heket. Then the god of the dust, the god of the earth, Geb. The swarms of insects, you have the god of creation that had the head of a fly, right? Just like an insect. Then you have the boils. Sorry, I'm mixed up. The livestock is Hathor, the god who had the head of a cow, right? Then you have the boils, which is against Isis, the god of medicine. Hail is Nut, goddess of the sky. Locusts, Seth, god of storms. And the darkness, you all know this god, Ra, the god of the sun. You see why it has to end there? It's the highest god, right? That's why I don't understand why people are not classifying it like that, because obviously it has to end with the highest god, which is Ra, the god of darkness. So I'm situating the death of the firstborn outside of this testing period. It's not a plague. It is not something that God is, testing Pharaoh with, right? He's not testing Pharaoh with the life of his son. It's something else altogether. You follow? Make sure you jot this down. So the firstborn is not a plague, it's something else. It's not, right? People have said, oh, God was testing, right? If the firstborn is still in the testing, God is killing people to test people, right? That's messed up, right? So it's outside, right? Ends with the highest God, Ra, the God of darkness, right? So the warfare we're dealing with here. So God, in a way, is bracing Pharaoh to stand up in this war situation and witness the warfare between God and the gods of Egypt. That's where the war is taking place. The war is not taking place between Pharaoh and God. You follow? The war is taking place between God and the God of Egypt's gods of Egypt, sorry. And Pharaoh, in a way, is called to stand up and witness this or be part of this, right? God is not fighting Pharaoh. You follow? So that's the first thing we see here, right? This, and so he's strengthening him. God is strengthening him throughout, so he can. In other words, Pharaoh needs to hold out until the 10 plagues are over for God to really manifest his victory over the Egyptian gods, right? Imagine Pharaoh bends over, and kind of like folds over, and is like, after the 6th plague, right? Do you have total victory over the Egyptian gods? If Pharaoh is like, okay, go. Do you have total victory? No, right? God wanted to really display that I will destroy every single god in this land. Right, I will show myself the only God. And Pharaoh had to keep it, so he had to keep Pharaoh going so he could demonstrate this, right? You follow me? That's what is going on. I think the thing he has up his sleeve is to show total victory over the Egyptian gods to Pharaoh, so that Pharaoh perhaps might change his allegiance. That is the goal. The goal is not to terrorize Egypt. The goal is to bring Egypt under the wings of the God of Israel. You follow me? That's the goal. That's why initially it's kind of tricks, right? But then it gets harsher and harsher. The testing period gets harder and harder, but the goal is not to terrorize Egypt. The goal is to bring Egypt back to God, right? To show Egypt your gods are worthless. Follow the one true God. And by the way, it succeeded. How do we know this succeeded? How do we know that Egyptians, in a way, were convinced? Anybody familiar with what happened next? Yeah.
Wasn't it when the Egyptians were telling Pharaoh like get it over with, something like
So
that?
yes, you have the officials who are scared, but how do we know that God succeeded in gaining the heart of Egypt?
They gave the slaves wealth. They gave the Israelites wealth and everything.
There's that, and there's one more thing. Shows that God succeeded in winning the Egyptians' hearts. Even beyond that. Successful war. Ah, you don't know?
God's part.
No,
The killing of the firstborn?
no. Didn't win anybody's hearts. The multitudes that came out of Egypt with Israel. Israel didn't go out alone. Hundreds and hundreds of thousands of Egyptians went out with them. They're called the mixed multitude in the story. That's Egyptians and other people who were there, because Egypt was cosmopolitan. So you had certainly other nations, but you certainly had a number of Egyptians who understood and left with the Hebrews. You look surprised.
That I've always interpreted that to be like the other slaves. They were more than just Israelites.
Yeah. A mixed multitude could be, other slaves, but it doesn't say specifically. It could be Egyptians who were, this is powerful. Or it could be other strangers or other dwellers, right? Yes.
Are you talking about the Erev Rav? Is that like the word?
Yes,
But
exactly.
they get punished later on. though.
They do.
So like they're
Why
not
are you
fully
ruining
safe.
everything?
They're not fully safe.
They're not fully safe. I have to go study that text. I
Yeah.
haven't looked at it, but you're right. They do get punished. All of them, though? All of them?
I think so.
Oh gosh. Okay. Where is that? Give me the
It's in
text.
The story of Korah. Like,
I know.
Yeah.
Yes, I have to look it up. I will look at the mixed multitude to see if all of them died in the desert.
A lot of them did.
A lot of them
Might
did.
be
Yeah.
all of them.
Yeah, we have to look. But definitely for now, let's remain on the bright silver lining of the story, right? Many Egyptians perhaps left with the Hebrews, right? So the warfare that God did perhaps did win a few hearts, right? Okay, so we have that. Now, I want to look at the expression weighed down. if you're familiar with, so it happens several times. It happens after, already in the third time, you have the heart is moving from being strengthened to being weighed down. So what does this mean? Why is he shifting the language here, right? The author. So if you know Egyptian theology, especially the Book of the Dead, anybody familiar with the Book of the Dead in Egypt? Very famous piece of literature about the afterlife, right? The Egyptians were obsessed with the afterlife. And there's a rite that takes place in the afterlife. After you die, your heart is taken and weighed against the feather of the goddess Ma'at. And the goddess Ma'at, remember, is the goddess of cosmic order, cosmic justice. So your heart is weighed against the feather of the goddess Ma'at. And if the heart is too heavy, what happens to you? Exactly, you don't go into the field of reeds, like they say, right? So when you see here weighed down, you know what's going on. What is the text saying here about Pharaoh at the time of the plague of the frogs? What's the text hinting at when it says it was strengthened, and then it was weighed down? Yeah, what do you see?
I wasn't raising my hand.
Oh, I know, but you seem to have understood.
I mean, from what it's saying, I guess, Pharaoh's very much shifting between. Well, his heart conditions are always switching, which could be, well, which relates to what you were saying, where when his heart is hardened or when it's heavy, way down.
Yep.
It would mean that he's in a place where I would want to say if he was waiting, he would be going to hell, but it also switches to being strengthened where
Yeah, he goes back and forth. So you have Pharaoh going back and forth between the text basically is saying at this point, you're not just fighting a war, you're losing it. You're losing it in the sense you're losing your soul, right? The text is in a way warning Pharaoh, be careful. You're progressively losing your soul as you continue to, right, resist, right, the will of the God of Israel and allowing for the destruction of Egypt, right? It's not even that he's resisting the God of Israel, that he's allowing for the destruction of Egypt. Your heart, right, you are in judgment, right? The text is alluding to the fact that Pharaoh here has taken a wrong turn, right? He has taken a wrong turn. He has chosen the road of iniquity. He has left behind his role as the shepherd of cosmic order, right? Remember, that was the role of Pharaoh, supposed to protect cosmic order. Here in this situation, he's not fighting for cosmic order anymore. What is he fighting for? Himself, right? This is no more the shepherd king, right? Who is supposed to protect cosmic order, maintain justice, right? Pharaoh is, the text is alluding to the fact that Pharaoh is walking the path of iniquity, and it's a warning, right? This whole 10 plagues is for Pharaoh. Be careful, Pharaoh. Your heart is becoming heavy. That's what the text is saying, right? Beware, Pharaoh. Your heart is becoming heavy. Your own gods, right, are having an issue with you right now, right? The goddess Ma'at of justice is going to find your heart too heavy and you won't make it, right? Okay, so just basically, right, summary, what I'm seeing in general, right, is, and I want to summarize that, is that God here, in my view, is not trying to terrorize Egypt, but rather working with Pharaoh, right? He's working with Pharaoh. He's kind of putting him in the, how do you say that when you're like in the first, when you're at the opera and you're at the front row seat, right? Giving Pharaoh a front row seat to this warfare between God and the Egyptian gods. And even though Pharaoh sees that the God of Israel is winning, he refuses to relent, and thereby putting his own soul and Egypt into danger. Okay, go ahead, Lam. I see the thoughts churning.
That's like the way you're portraying it is good and all, but I just think that why this, like, it sounds nice when you say, oh, God is trying to redeem Pharaoh, God is trying to redeem the Israelites, I mean the Egyptians,
Egyptian, yeah.
On behalf of the betterment of humanity.
Yeah.
That sounds nice, but also, does it not sound a little narcissistic of God to be like, hey, you shouldn't believe in your chaotic gods, like you should believe in me instead?
Well,
and, like,
he
and
basically,
basically destroys their way of life
oh,
on the basis of it doesn't meet his standard.
yeah, I see what you're saying. Well, it's warfare, right? Remember the what God is doing. Okay, so let's put it this way. It's yeah, I see what you're saying. It's not very inclusive or it's not very sensitive to
It's as God is redeeming these people.
yes,
But that's like on the basis of that these people need to be redeemed. That's like saying
yes.
the Westerners colonizing America from the Native Americans because they were savages and Indians.
That's a good point. That's a good
So,
point.
That's like,
Now God in a way is not saying these are your gods and I'm this foreign God. God
Mhm.
is considered, right? He sees himself as the highest authority over these gods. You see what I mean?
yes, and
So
that's
he
the
is a
problem with that.
so so just to finish, when he creates the universe, right, and then you have and so forth, he sees himself or he is depicted as the highest God of everyone, right? This is not just the God of Israel, right? He's depicted in the biblical text as a cosmic God of everyone, right? So when he's arriving on the scene, and by the way, the Egyptians had a sense of the cosmic God, right? You even have in Egypt some documents where they became monotheistic. There was a movement in Egypt that became monotheistic and that connected to this highest God. So the notion of a highest God above all the other gods is well known even in Canaan, right?
Mhm.
So this you don't have to see this as a manifestation of the Israelite God. You can
Mhm.
see it as a manifestation of the highest God, right?
And that leads to
Okay.
that leads to the fact that we're reading it from the Israelite point of view. So you saying, "Oh, this is the highest God," is negating
Okay, fair
other
enough.
people's
Yeah, 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 yeah.
realities, and also the fact that is if he is the highest God, why let it happen in the first place? Why let people stray from his own religion?
Okay, Liv, you know what? I'm gonna think about that because that's a very nice unless you want to respond, but I very much like that and I need to process it and I will come back to you definitely. You want to say something?
My kind of reflects the defense of this, that it's not too much of God to ask the Egyptians, because like other people have come to that decision before, like it's actually easier, like it's hard for us to think about it because in our, like, we're very familiar with monotheism where it's like, oh, like we have one God that's the highest God, and if I'm to convert to a different religion, that means I have to renounce this one and take that one on. But in a polytheistic sense, like there's a bunch of gods, and so they're very open to the idea of like, oh, you have a new God, oh, where's your God from? Maybe like I can add him to my pantheon. Like this happens in the book of like Jonah, where when he's on the ship, like he's like escaping from his duties on the ship, and so God's punishing them by like trying to flip the ship over with waves, and people start freaking out. They're like, whose God is this? Like whose God is punishing us? And Jonah's like, it's God. Jonah's like, it's like the only God. He's like, it's my
Yes.
God.
But it's
They interpret
right.
that, they interpret that to mean they don't understand like, oh, this is the only like one true God. They're like, oh no, they believe him, but they think it in the sense that this is like this, we must be in your God's territory right now. They still like believe him within their own framework. So it's possible that the Egyptians could have believed that like, oh, the Israelite God is here, like passing judgment because we have his people in our custody right now.
That's a good point. So the Israelite God came, right? Intruded in Egypt's affairs because they had his firstborn hostage. Does that help? That's not a bad answer. So that's why he's there.
Because, like, maybe, like, to play devil's advocate, you could be like, is it not better to be chosen instead of forced?
What do you mean?
Uh,
Who's forced?
You're kind of forcing the Egyptians to validate your existence by plaguing them.
Well, they're
So-
holding on to the firstborn, right? Had they let the firstborn go, maybe God would have.
It's like
But you said he didn't let them go.
Right, he did want to rally them to himself, right?
right, so
Yeah.
that's like saying, would you rather be feared or loved? And clearly this God, well, in this depiction by Moses, it's he rather be
I see what you're saying.
than
Yes,
freely chosen to be.
that's a good point. That's a good point. Although, uh, I mean, I do see this as an act of love, kind of like he's really working with Pharaoh here, right?
But
And
he's forcing him to work.
Well, Pharaoh, but not the people, right? The people are watching this, right? So he's not forcing the people. In fact, the people willingly left. A lot of people willingly left, right?
And plagues and.
Yeah,
and
no, that's true. It's
killing
it's
of the firstborn, so.
well, that doesn't count. Remember, I object to that.
I said the 10 plagues
Yeah, yeah.
and the-
We're
oh,
good. We're good.
so
Yeah,
it's
yeah, yeah.
like-
The killing
not
is a
forcing
problem.
them, right,
Yeah.
But you're forcing them to believe.
Yeah, it is violent. I mean, like I said, the God of Israel is definitely violent, but he's not murderous. That's the
Right.
distinction I make. But yes, there's a violence of God. In fact, when we read the book of Jonah, how he pursues Jonah and forces him to do his God does, but I see that as an act of love. Because let's again, you're seeing the text, oh, it's their text, their God, and now they're reading it in that. Try not to do that. Try to see it like God as the God, right? Let's go along, let's give them the benefit of the doubt that they're dealing with the one true God somehow. One true God pursuing Pharaoh and Egypt violently to get them to come towards him. This is the kind of passion you don't see in the West. We got to be in the Middle East, right?
Like,
Mm.
I don't want to drag out, but it's like
It's-
saying like,
In other words, who would want to be loved like that? I'm gonna do everything I ever had to get you over here, right?
it's back to have the free will to pick that person. Like you can, like what you said, God, up until this point, God was our partner. So think of it as
Yeah.
like your spouse.
Yes.
Would you rather you love your spouse because you really chose to love that person? Or would you want that person to give you ultimatum after ultimatum after ultimatum until the only option is to.
Depends who I am. If I'm a drug addict, right? No, I'm serious. And my spouse is like, honey. No, but look at Pharaoh, right? I mean, you see Pharaoh how he is, right? I mean, he's dealing with Pharaoh. Imagine I'm like that. I'm a drug addict. I can't be talked to, and my partner is like, honey, please be better. That's not gonna work. At one point, my partner has to just like drag me to, like tie me up, drag me to whatever
Yes.
detox and so forth. Right. So God is dealing with a really tough partner. This is Egypt after years and decades of hardening. You have to realize that these slaves, everyone is complicit,
Mhm.
right? This is not just Pharaoh. The whole Egyptians have become very hard. He's dealing with a very difficult partner, so he has to move very strongly. You see what I mean? But at least my take here is that he's not shedding blood until later, right? Until later, not even the firstborn. That's even, we'll talk about that, right? Until when they throw themselves in the sea, right? Well,
They're taking away their water source.
he is taking away. He's working very violently. I agree, but for me, the partner is very difficult, and he has to be extremely violent, right? But in the West, we don't know this, right? You have to really understand the Middle Eastern mentality of this kind of rage, passionate type of, right?
But
Right.
you also walk away. Because it's at the end of the day, it's that person's choice.
Yeah, and again, right, the Egyptians, a lot of them chose to follow, right? But you're saying out of fear, right? And perhaps, right? Perhaps, and you're right, because I mean, perhaps it wasn't yet, love.
Mhm.
But there was potential perhaps for getting to know.
I think it's toxic.
I tried. But see, you're talking about normal partner. This is a difficult partner. You have to shake him up, right? If it was a normal partner, like say, I don't know, who else did God work with? Who was even the Israelites, he shakes them up. He's extremely violent with the Israelites too. So I feel here there's a kind of despair of God, desperation to like shake humanity up. And and yes, it's based on fear, but it's better than, this total direction which Egypt is taking, where they are losing their empathy, like you were saying, and they are becoming slave masters and so forth. And God, in a way, is trying to shake up the whole country to move them away from that path. You follow? So even if they come trembling with fear, it's better than staying and being hardcore slave masters. You follow? Does that help a little bit? Still,
I understand your point.
you see
it's
my
just-
point?
it just
Okay.
doesn't-
Oh, okay. It does. Oh, that's too bad. Okay. We will talk more. Yes, go ahead.
I was gonna say, because at this point, Egypt already strayed so far from the Israelites' God that they didn't know him, and they were in a sense worshiping idols.
Yeah, it's not just that, they had become wicked. Like they were slave masters, right? Their hearts collectively were hardened, right? So I'm seeing this personally, right, as a kind of act of love where God is shaking up the whole country, right? What were you gonna say?
I was gonna make an interject. I'm not sure how much this changes, but I think we're like using the wrong metaphor in that when we compare it to like romantic relationships, it seems toxic. When we compare it to like familial relationships, it makes more sense. That
Ah,
God
okay.
is your like he's not just the partner you choose, he's the creator of the world. Like he's like this
Okay.
is a familial relationship, and that like you recognizing him is not just a choice, it's a responsibility. Although then the issue comes, well, like, isn't that more of a responsibility for Israel than it is for the Egyptians? Because then he goes further to make the covenant with Abraham and to make that
Right.
same covenant with the Egyptians. There's that objection.
Yes, see it like a parental relationship more. God is the creator, right? And he's dealing with his creation. So with Israel, there's a more marriage type, but with the other nations, it's a filiate children, right? So he sees his child going over here. Is he
Right.
going to be nice?
Like, slow down. In my-
Okay,
Even if if it was a romantic relationship, you would call it toxic. If it's a familial relationship, you would call it a helicopter parent. Where it's
Yes,
not-
that's
you're
it.
not- you're not
I stand by it.
you're not letting the person, child, whatever,
Yeah.
be their own, make their own decision in that you can hope that you've taught them well enough that you can hope that they'll make it.
But this is not even, this child has strayed so far, you gotta
Yeah,
slap him around a
right.
bit. You gotta-
That's
So
when
human.
that's when, but you like,
God just loves us too much to do
because
that.
when.
There you go, you get it.
When
You
you
know?
parent a child, you're thinking like direct.
Yeah,
This is not exactly direct.
Because they strayed so far from him already.
well, they are his children, but they've
Right,
drifted very
right,
far, right?
Yes, but you can slap a child,
Yes,
but your God
Yeah.
can't exactly slap you across the face.
why not? That's what he's doing. Like your parents slap you when
Mhm.
you're really in trouble and you cannot talk
Yes.
to you. So he slaps you, right? I know we're not supposed to slap our children. That's right. But a kid, right? Imagine small child, about to cross the street. You're gonna grab them and you're not gonna be all nice, honey, stop, there's a car explaining. No, right?
In this sense, what is he protecting?
Themselves. They have become so hardened, right? And I mean, they're slave masters.
This is his child.
It is his child. That's the point. All of humanity is his child. There's the firstborn who is Israel. At least that's how it's described. Firstborn is Israel, but everybody else is his child, right? So his goal, obviously, the firstborn. Let me explain this in terms of ancient Near East.
Mhm.
Firstborn, the father pours into the firstborn, who's then supposed to help the others, right? But they're still his children. So he's trying to bring out his firstborn, but at the same time, he cares about the other children. So as he's trying to get two birds in one stone, redeem the firstborn and get some of his children out of this situation,
So
right?
because he neglected his other children, he's punishing them for how they become.
Well, it
is what I'm
depends.
hearing.
I-
In that metaphor.
No, yeah. It's not that he neglected, right? Egypt initially was knew God. We see they have dreams from God, right? Two pharaohs in a row have dreams from God, but little by little they stray and become so hardened. Like you said, they become so hardened they can't connect to God anymore. God, right? The highest God. So now he's intervening and trying to, right? Yeah, go
I
ahead.
was gonna say, I mean, a way you can think of it is in the parental sense, if you were talking to your child and for a point they listen to you and follow you, but then the child starts going their own way, you still speak to them, but they're listening and they're not listening
Yeah.
to the point where they become so hardened to you. It's like even if you're speaking directly to them, they don't care.
And they don't even have their choice anymore because they have become so wicked, right? You know, when you get so bad that you're so seeped in your own, like,
Ideal.
just I mean, look at an addict. Does he have a choice, right? You become so hardened, you don't even have a choice to come back. You can't even do it. You have to have someone just, right? That's what I'm seeing, right? Does that happen a little bit?
I understand, but psychologically speaking, the more you tell someone to do something, the more they want.
Oh, he's not telling them anything. He's like, I'm gonna destroy you till you follow me, and I will love you that much, right? So yeah, there is definitely, I stand by that, a violence of God, where at one point he's like, you know what? Screw your free will. I'm taking you with me. Do you see what I mean? There is something higher than free will for God, which is salvation. I stand by the way, take this down because we will see this in apocalyptic literature. I want us to realize this because otherwise we cannot understand hell, right? There is a value higher than free will for God, and that is salvation. And he is ready to bust our free will in order to bring us into salvation. He doesn't care about free will. That's a modern concept from Descartes, right? It's a big deal that we've made in modern, Western philosophy, free will. But this, God doesn't give a damn. He cares about salvation, right? So he'll work with you. But when he sees there's no hope and your free will is fucking you up, he's just gonna override it. Okay, that's just how he's gonna do it. Makes sense? I know it sounds terrible, unpolitically correct, really bad parenting, whatever you want to call it. Okay, okay.
I feel like psychologically but I feel like
You are a psych
yes,
major.
I
Well,
am a
that's
psych
why
major.
we're
It's just for me, it feels a little narcissistic.
okay. Well,
In the way that I view it.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
I can understand that how I view it is not the same. So
I see what you mean. Yeah, well, I think God, it's not that God is being narcissistic. I don't think he's into himself. He's into the Egyptians, right? So it's like there is a parent and he's like, I need my kid back and I will shake them
but
up.
you're telling your kid to believe in you. You're telling your kid that I am your everything.
I am your parent. Follow. Yeah, I'm your
It's-
parent.
It's enmeshment, it's not narcissism.
Okay.
That's it. No, that's it.
I mean,
Yes.
I don't think they have to believe in him, they just have to believe that there's a force out there that wants them to not be slave masters.
Yeah, I
Like,
think that was
like
enough.
the only,
Yeah.
the only condition,
That's enough.
like the only command is Moses going to Pharaoh and saying, let my people go. It's not like submit to this other god. It's
Ah,
just like,
that's good.
this God is our God, he wants you to let us go. And like, just like in the situation of Jonah, they can very easily like accept another God into the pantheon and be like, oh, like, or not even, like they used to, like when I was a kid, it used to blow my mind that, like Rick wrote like the Percy Jackson series and stuff. Like it blew my mind that like in his view, like, oh, the Greek and Roman mythology gods existed at the same time as the Egyptian mythology god.
That is weird, isn't it?
Yeah, because we're so used to like Christianity, Judaism, Islam, like them all being mutually exclusive, but it turns out like that's not an interesting thing. That's just how people thought it worked back then. People thought that multiple pantheons existed at the same time and they had different like territorial like jurisdictions.
Yeah,
So it's not difficult for an Egyptian to be like, oh yeah, your God is here because we captured you. And he
exactly.
just wants us to let you go.
I think
now.
that
And, like
helps.
after that, we never have to hear of him again. But
That's a
what
good
it's-
point. Yeah.
gonna say that would raise issues though, because if you have gods who are part of their pantheon that say, hey, this god created this world, but then you're gonna say, they only own this portion of
Yeah,
society.
Well, that's why I'm saying he also wants to save the Egyptians, right? He's not just into his firstborn. There's also a desire to shake up the society. And you're right, they don't need to come with him. They can stay, but just be different, right? Yes. You have to go.
Yeah. What do we have to do for next?
I'll put it on the
Okay.
bright space.
Oh,
Okay.
got it.
2 seconds, the firstborn, please, the death of the firstborn. Okay, the death of the firstborn is not part of the 10 plagues. Let's just be clear about that. It's not God testing. It's something that comes after, right? Death of the firstborn. And I will show you that God actually did not come up with that idea. Look at the text. Let's go there.
I was gonna say it's very much related to how Egyptians did with.
Exactly. Exactly. We're going to talk about that. So let's go there. Please show me where it is. I don't have time to. Where is this death of the firstborn? Here it is. Okay, chapter 11. Every single plague, you can look back at the text, right? Every single plague, God specifies which plague it's going to be. Except, interestingly, 2 plagues. The plague of hail, I think. Yes, the plague of hail and the plague of the firstborn. It's not God who decides. Do you know who decides? Moses, right? So Moses is actually the one. So I'm not going to focus on hail. It's intriguing that hail also is there, but I'm not going to focus on that. I'm going to look at the firstborn and let's read how it plays out, right? So here is one of the only plagues where God doesn't specify. He only says to Moses, chapter 11, verse 1, I will bring one more plague. And we don't know what it is. And this is unusual. In every other plague, God specified, I will bring this plague, Nile, river, frogs, dust. Here's the only plague, no specification. And then you have Moses going to Pharaoh and says this, thus says the Lord, toward midnight I will go forth among the Egyptians, blah, 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 and every firstborn in the land shall die, and so forth, right? Now, the plague was unspecified, but by the time Moses gets to Pharaoh, he has a very clear idea what that plague will be. And guess what that plague echoes? You said it.
The Pharaoh ordered for all the Hebrew.
Exactly. He was a victim of this genocide, right? Pharaoh, in a way, is bringing judgment as Pharaoh. Moses is bringing judgment, right? This is not the trial period anymore. This is judgment, which Moses, in a way, has appropriated, right? It is Moses here who inflicts judgment on Egypt and he could have come up with any plague. I mean, why not come up with, a heart attack on Pharaoh or something, or leprosy, where he's like, oh, now I will repent, right? Why not hit Pharaoh's body? Why this general plague to decimate the firstborn of Egypt? This is an act of vengeance, right? And you see that very clearly in verse 8, where you have, after he has said all this, after that I will depart. And then Moses left Pharaoh's presence in hot anger. There is an indication of Moses' state of mind, which is rage. And out of this rage came this vengeful, right? All the firstborn will die. And because God has partnered with Moses, it happens, right? So I just wanted to say that, right? That the firstborn is not a plague, it's an act of vengeance. I'm going to see it like that. An act of retaliation for the genocide of the Hebrew babies back in the day, right? Yes.
So what then do you make of, like, even when Moses warns Pharaoh, it says Moses said to Pharaoh in God's name, and then he speaks in first person as if he's speaking as a God, like
exactly.
Said to Pharaoh in God's name, around midnight I will go out in the midst of Egypt. So
yeah,
it suggests that God said these things to Moses. And
it does.
Just relaying.
It does, but there's one difference is that every other plague, God first told Moses specifically, here is the plague, and then Moses would go, thus says the Lord, blah, blah, blah. This is the only plague where God doesn't tell Moses specifically, this is what I'm going to do. Moses walks in the presence of Pharaoh and then declares that, right? So that's the you see the textual difference, Davida?
Doing what Moses wants.
So here, yes, which is the setup, right? This is the structure. No, it's not good, right? This is not good. But remember what I told you, right? God is working with a partner and he is in a way limited by that partner, right? The partner will influence how God will flow into the world. That's his choice, right? He has chosen to partner with humanity. If he's with Abraham, it's great. But now he's with Moses, y'all. So it's gonna go south occasionally, right? So, and this is a moment, but again, right, this is not, I continue to claim that there was a plan A here, right? There was a plan A, which was to shake Egypt up and perhaps even cause the turning of Pharaoh, right? The 10 days imply that. This is a time of repentance, any possibility. There was perhaps even Pharaoh would have turned, perhaps all of Egypt would have repented, not left with them, but repented and been a different nation, right? And then, of course, it doesn't happen, and now we pass to plan B, which is violence. Always plan B is always violence because then human beings take over, right? Which is each time the human being takes over, you can be sure there will be violence, right? So just food for thought. Thank you, Lam. That was very good discussion. But so we didn't do the Song of the Sea, which we will do next time. So so I will write on Brightspace exactly what y'all need to read for next time, because there's a few different passages. So thank you, very nice. I will see you not this week, right? Because we have Monday schedule on Thursday, right? So that's it. Next week.
Oh, so what do we have to do for?
I'll put on Brightspace the
Oh,
reading.
okay.
Yeah. And in the meantime, keep reading, right? Book of Exodus, the whole Pentateuch. I want you to read the whole Pentateuch. So read the Pentateuch. All right. I'll see you guys next week.